Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Hey, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm wicked excited to be here today because this is something that's been on my mind. You know how like you come across whether it's a piece of music or you watch a movie or you see a show or you read a book or you hear a story and it just like stays with you. And this has just been kind of like ricochet rabbiting around my head for the last week or so since I first saw this video that I'm going to tell you about, which is the inspiration for today's episode. So before we dive into it, I just want to say thank you so much. If you're a loyal listener and you're here and you're back, I appreciate it so much. I really do. I mean, you could be doing anything else besides listening to this sucker or watching it. And so the fact that you're choosing, willingly choosing to be here means so much to me. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy. And welcome. Join the other weirdos. Woo. Okay. Speaking of weirdos, what you can't see, right? You can't see is Toby Pajamas. Toby Pajamas, my cat. He's right down there. Toby's like possibly 17 now, you guys. He just had his birthday. He's a rescue. We don't know how old he is. Okay. You can also see in the background, if you're not watching, I got Bob Ross. I got little Bob Ross joining me. Joan of Arc, a couple of Jesuses. My mother's over here, Ganesh, whatever. I got a lot of little fox over there. I got so many helpers that are helping me to bring. If I had sponsors, I'd be like sponsored by Bob, my Bob Ross stuffy. Okay, and we're back. All right, listen. So I don't know if it's like a podcast player, an app, whatever it is. I saw this video on what's called BBC One. So I kind of think of that as almost like our PBS here in the United States, okay? So BBC One, unfortunately, I can't watch the whole interview that I'm about to tell you about. I've only seen little clips of it, like, you know, like real length, like 90 seconds, whatever. And it's an interview series and it's called The Assembly. Now, again, because I can't watch it consistently or at all, really, other than little clips that get put on social media, I don't know if this is something that they do again and again and again, but all I know is I think that this episode was in celebration of Autism Acceptance Week. I have some notes here just so I don't forget. I don't want to misspeak about somebody else's thing. And so I guess the format is that there's an audience. So there's a guest who's been invited to be, you know, interviewed. And the interviewers in the audience are like 35 people. And they're either people who are autistic, neurodivergent, or learning disabled adults. And they were like young adults and older adults and stuff. And then I think there are some people who maybe, you know, guide them or work with them who are also kind of scattered around the room. Okay, so who they're interviewing is an actor and a director named Michael Sheen. And I just love Michael Sheen. I mean, I love his work. I feel like there are certain actors and certain people. Now, of course, sometimes you can be fooled, right? Maybe they're putting on a persona or whatever. But I think sometimes you can get just kind of a sense of somebody's nature. You know what I mean? And Michael Sheen was in Good Omens. He was in Underworld. I think he was in Masters of Sex. He was in, what was the other one? The Vampires, right? Oh my God. It's like, I can't believe I can't think of it. But it's like with Robert Pattinson and the other, you know, with the vampires could glamour you or whatever. Oh, Twilight. Yeah. And we're back. Okay. I'm pretty sure he was in that. Okay. So let me set the scene. So Michael Sheen is sitting at the front. He's surrounded kind of like in an oval, like, you know, the people are like, all the interviewers are in chairs in front of him, kind of like in a semicircle. And the promotion for this show, right? Because I've seen various little clips. They said, be prepared to be asked any question from this audience. And there was like a little like Spitfire clip. And somebody asked him, are you afraid of bats? Somebody else asked him, do you like beatboxing? It was so fantastic. Somebody else asked him if he could cook, if he could bake. Somebody else asked him a question like, what's it like? I swear to God, they got up and they said, what's it like to date somebody who's only 5 years older than your daughter? I was like, oh my God, so fantastic, right? So it totally makes you want to watch the whole interview and just see how Michael Sheen responds to this. Okay. But there was one in particular, a young man. His name was Leo, and Leo wanted to ask a question. Now, if I could describe Leo, I would, just because I'm a very visual person, right? As a storyteller, I like to be able to imagine things in my head. So Leo looks pretty tall, maybe. I don't know if he is in real life, but from my aspect, he looked pretty tall. He had kind of like sandy blondish, like light brown hair, kind of like cherub cheeks that got a little flushed because he was nervous. He has the mic. So he gets handed the mic, and the announcer, one of the helpers, says, the next question is from Leo. And Michael Sheen says, hello, Leo, you're very kind. You can just, it was so kind. And so Leo goes to speak, like he stops himself. He goes to speak, he can't get the words out. And he's just like, he's really like trying to ask this question. And you can just see from his face what he's doing with his mouth, the way his body's being held, that he's struggling and he's having a hard time. Okay. So it's taking him a bit of time to do this. And the people around him start to say things like, you can do it, Leo. Don't don't worry, all this stuff. And while his friends and his peers around him are saying these things, Michael Sheen says to him, take all the time you need. Like, we're not in a rush. And at one point, there's such a long pause that one of the guides or teachers leans over and puts her hand on him and says, do you want me to ask it? Do you want me to ask the question, or do you want to do it? And Leo says, I want to do it. I'm just nervous. And like your heart just goes like, oh my God. Like, if you've ever known anybody who has stuttered or has had a brain injury or has has any kind of learning disability where they're challenged trying to grasp the words they're trying to say, whatever, you have such, well, I can't speak for you, but for me, I have such compassion for that, to be able to communicate freely or trying to find the words. And just knowing when you're that nervous and you're talking to like a movie star, right? Like what that could be like for him. And so Michael Sheen says to him, take all the time you need. And Michael is doing these little things, like he gives him a little wink. He gives him the most warm smile, like all these gestures. And we're going to talk more about that later and why that matters. But as I'm watching this whole scene, like my heart is just like, you're on the edge of the seat, and it's like, Leo goes to speak and he opens his mouth and then he shuts it again. And then he puts the mic to his mouth and nothing comes out. And then he just says to himself, right. Right. Okay. Like you can see he's really trying to do it. And then all of a sudden, his little buddy, his little friend that's sitting next to him just kind of like shouts out. He just kind of blurts out, increase your courage. Increase your courage. And when I tell you, dear listener, I almost fell off my chair. Like my heart was just like, oh my God. Excuse me. What an incredible thing to say. What an incredible thing to say. He shouts out, increase your courage. Excuse me, which is the name of today's episode. It's the title of today's episode, because it hit me like a ton of bricks for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, I just thought it was so beautiful. It was such a powerful thing to say. He didn't say, don't be nervous. He didn't say, hurry up. He didn't tell him how not to be. He just simply says, increase your courage, which means now I want to talk about courage and fear, because telling somebody, and it is a beautiful thing to say, and again, we'll dive more into that in a minute, increase your courage. It was also, he had to increase his courage because he was feeling something else, which is fear. And this is what I find really fascinating. So let's talk about this, because we live in a society where there's a lot of like feel the fear and do it anyways. And we're going to dive into that too. Feel the fear and do it anyways, right? I come from New England, right? I come from Massachusetts, right? The home of the massholes, where everything was like, suck it up and stuff it down. Just do it, right? No pain, no gain, like doesn't matter, right? Force through it, push yourself, like all of this kind of tyranny, which, I get it. And a lot of us, it made us tougher. Yep, we survived it. Yep, we got a little dopamine rush from when we felt terrified and we still did it afterwards, right? However, all right, there's also a lot in our society, no matter geographically, like where you live, this thought system. And Nelson Mandela. So I'm gonna tell you a quote about Nelson Mandela said about courage. And then I'm going to tell you what the dictionary calls courage. And then we're going to talk about it from somebody else's point of view as well. And here's the thing about courage. We do not have enough time to kind of go through what the writers say and the literary artists and the poets versus the scientists versus the theologians versus the whatever. If you just Google courage and how to increase your courage, you'll get 1,000, right, different hits on the Google. Okay, but Nelson Mandela said this. He said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So courage isn't me, I don't have any fear. It's the triumph over it. It's the one who conquers that fear. Hi, Toby. Just waking up for his nap. Okay, so then I looked up courage in the dictionary and I was like, okay, what is it they have to say? So it means mental or moral strength, to venture, to persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Okay, it comes from the old French, supposedly, courage, C-O-R-A-G-E, which means hot. Like I'm making a hat with my hands, right? It means hot. Okay. And the hot is being the seat of emotions. Okay. So it comes from also, here's some other, I looked in a couple of different places. It was also described as spirit and temperament courage, right? Your state or frame of mind, meaning valor or quality of mind, which enables one to meet danger and trouble without fear. Also, it is a metaphor, sometimes courage or courage, for inner strength. And I thought this was really interesting because some people think that courage is not innate, right? Is not something that is built in. It's more of a skill that people can develop over time. When courage comes from having the right skills in place. And like I said, we can go down the rabbit hole, but I just want to give you a little sip, as Linda Ty says, a little taste of these different kind of points of view about courage. Okay. Now, Erica Dawson, she's a professor at Cornell, I think business school or whatever. She did a keynote speech on this, on courage. And she describes this, and I would love to hear what you guys think courage is, but I wanted, like I said, I wanted to come at this from a couple of different point of views and not just my own. Okay, so she did a whole talk on courage. She says, courage is defined as having 4 different components. Number 1, there needs to be an action that has an uncertain outcome. And the reason why the uncertain outcome is so important is if we knew how it was going to end, like if we knew it was going to work out and everything was going to be fine, it would not require courage, right? We'd just be like, yeah, I got this in the bag. It's no big deal, right? Okay. Number 2, the person, right? The person must be fearful. Again, these are the components, right? Number 1, an action needs an uncertain outcome, and then the person must be fearful, right? There has to be fear involved. Number 3, right? The presence of a perceived or real risk. This is another component that is necessary. And then number 4, the individual who perceives the risks and feels fear, where the outcome is uncertain, then also takes action. And it's that piece right there that even though they are feeling fear and they are perceiving a risk, they have an outcome that is uncertain, they still take action. She defines this as courage, which I find so fascinating. and really landed for me. And can you hear Toby just demanding so many things? Okay. So when I was thinking about this feeling fear, doing it anyways, right? It reminded me of something that also happened the same week, right? Which is, it reminded me of something that my hypnosis teacher, Melissa Tiers, who is brilliant, by the way, she does these great Instagram lives. If you don't follow her, don't know who she is, go check her out. She's brilliant. And one of the greatest things about Melissa is, as brilliant as she is, she remains curious. She remains a lifelong learner. And I always kind of love the point of view and spin that she puts on things. Okay. So this is what she said. She did a whole Instagram live on this, and she was calling, it was like a little mini series where she was like calling bullshit on things. And she's like, I call bullshit on this whole phrase, feel the fear and do it anyways. Okay. Because she says, feeling the fear and doing it anyways can actually oftentimes make matters worse. And she says it's much better to actually change the entire wiring of the brain, right? To change the emotional state first before you then do the thing. And why this, when I was listening to this Instagram live, like it moved me so much that I sent her a message and I was like, holy shit. I was like, this explains so much of myself to me. Because when I tell you that I spent most of my life like terrified, like most of my life, like deeply on the inside, like on the outside, like tough act, like on the outside when I was younger, tough act. But on the inside, I had so much fear, which makes total sense. If you look at my upbringing, if you look at my childhood, if you look at my mother being killed, if you look at, moving in, like all, like my whole childhood, I just kind of looked at the collective, consciousness of the culture I grew up in. If you looked at the things that happened, the events that happened, the lack of support, the different things that happen, the trauma, right? It makes total sense that I moved through the world, just kind of like white knuckling it, right? Like, oh my God, like still doing everything. And it was like, even like on spring break, I remember being on spring break one time down in Mexico. And there were like some local people who had some like land, like some sand sharks, right? Like swimming around like down in the water. And all these college kids are like up on this pier, like around. And the folks, there was a man and a woman in the water, and they were waving at the kids to like jump in. Like they're just like, jump in. And everybody's like, do it, do it, do it. And nobody wants to do it because everybody's afraid, right? We're like, okay, there's people down there, but all they're really seeing is sharks in the water, right? So my whole group of friends, what do they all do? They look at me and they go, she'll do it. KK will do it. Kay will do it. And I'm just like, and I just jump in. I just jump into the ocean with the sharks, right? And it's just like, I was afraid I could come across as looking kind of fearless, but of course my heart was like a gunga 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 gunga. But as an animal lover, I have to tell you, I'm wicked excited that I did do it. And it was like nothing hostile to them. I got to, swim around with the sharks, and that was like really cool and stuff like that. But my point is that I have often put myself in situations. I always say, like, I'm an introvert that makes herself do extroverted things, right? There's a part of me that is afraid of a lot of things, and I always make myself do it. And I was thinking about this while I was listening to Melissa, and I'm going to tell you more about what she went on to say and why my work with her and what I have learned as a hypnotist and just my work as a spiritual mentor and all the work that I've done, right, on myself, over the years, and that I continue to do with others. This made so much sense because anything that is done with repetition, right, that is felt deeply with emotion and done with repetition, it gets wired into your brain. And so here I have been from a very young age being told, basically, it doesn't matter that you're afraid, suck it up. Don't be all the things they used to say, don't be a pussy, like, like, don't be so thin skinned, don't be so sensitive, right? It doesn't matter. It didn't matter growing up if you were afraid or not. It didn't really matter. And when you think about when you're a little kid, even if you're growing up in a healthy environment where there is great attachment happening. You feel safe. Your nervous system feels pretty good most of the time, right? Little kids have, if you really just pause and think about how little control they actually have over their lives, right? Now, of course, they're not old enough or, mentally developed or physically developed enough to do most of the things to take care of themselves. But that's not my point. My point is that they're told when to go to bed. They're told what to eat and when to eat. They're told, don't do this, right? Like little kids pretty much just like get bossed around their whole childhood. They're often told, doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what you feel, it doesn't matter that you don't want to eat that, do that, hug that person, kiss that person, go to bed at this time, wear that, right? So as little kids, we really get programmed. And one of my programs was I was not allowed to feel afraid, and that to be afraid or to have big feelings or whatever, right? Weakness was not tolerated, right? My stepfather did not tolerate weakness. So it crafted in me this ability, yes, to have a fear and feel something and then just kind of like boom, bulldoze through it. But look, do you think that was helpful to my nervous system? Do you think that that was loving and kind to the parts of me that maybe needed a little more gentleness or a little more tenderness or a little more inquisitiveness, right? You know what I'm saying? So this whole idea of like just kind of like, push through your fear and do it anyways. So as hypnotists, as change workers, as spiritual mentors, a yoga teacher, whatever, there's a lot of tools, and not just myself, other coaches, other people, we have gathered a lot of tools. And one of the things that Melissa really talks about is that, again, neurons, right? Rick Hansen says neurons that fire together, wire together. So if we do something repetitively enough, this is how we get, habits. This is how we create state beliefs and identities and states of being, is we do something and believe something and say something and think something enough times. Okay. So she said, rather than feeling fear, and if you're not watching, you can't see, I'm making these like nervous movements, these jerky movements with my hands, like I'm afraid. Rather than feeling the fear and then wiring in, we just do it anyways, right? Why would I want to create that association with that thing that I'm trying to do? So I just keep wiring in, fear in this thing, fear in this thing. It is much better. And we have so many tools to do this, tools that I have learned from Melissa, you know what I mean? To first change the emotional state and then approach or go ahead and do the thing, okay? And I wrote this down because I want to make sure that I'm very clear in my language. First, we change the emotion. We change the emotional state. We change how we feel first. So for me, one of the big ones is when I'm curious about something, almost nothing will stop me, right? But curiosity for me is more like a love feeling, right? When I'm wicked curious, that's the thing that makes me want to go forward and lean in and say yes and kind of follow that impulse, that divine impulse, right? And so I would much rather feel curious or calm or less like freaked out, like more kind of like present and like being able to make a good decision. Because that's the other thing. When we're in that fear state, right? So for me, if I break it down spiritually, I would say I'm either in a state of love, a state of mind of love, a thought system of love, or a state of mind and a thought system of fear. I'm either choosing the teacher of love or I'm choosing the teacher of fear, right? And so if I'm in that place where I'm calm and curious and leaning in and I'm in like that yes state, my body, like my nervous system feels like calm, right? That's a lot different than going into something from that fear state. Because when you're in that fear state, the parts of your brain in the front of your brain that actually make good decisions, it is not available to you. It is offline, like the closed for business, right? So why make decisions from a fear state? Because there can be dire consequences when you just kind of are like, it doesn't matter what I feel. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to push through and do this thing. Now, of course, in life and death situations, right? Maybe that is necessary. But I'm just talking. Like, think about phobias. Think about all the different ways that we can be afraid in our life. Okay. So what changes the brain is to not keep feeling the fear and then do the thing. It's to change how you feel first using lots of different tools, right? We have so many tools to do that these days, right? EFT, bilateral stimulation, right? The TAPAS technique, like breath work. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Okay. That's what changes the brain. So now we come back to Leo and why this is important. So I started to think about what his friend blurted out and why it landed so deeply in my heart when he said, increase your courage. It was like a great piece of, like, just the words, like, increase your courage, and the way he said it. It was so powerful. It was brief, it was impactful, but when I thought about why did that move me, what was so powerful about it, what it wasn't so much that he was saying increase your courage, it's what those words were, which was encouragement. He was encouraging his friend. Now, to encourage, I looked this up too, to give you a quote unquote official definition. To encourage means to make strong, to hearten. Like, think hot, right? To hearten somebody, to inspire with courage and confidence and spirit or hope, to hearten them, to warm, right? To make warm, to cherish, to foster, to foment, to support. And I thought, that's what moved me. That's what I'm feeling, right? And in with, right? To be in with courage, to be given that courage, to be encouraged. That's what was so powerful to me. And when I started to think about what Michael Sheen was doing with his body, with his face, with his tone of voice, I don't even know if he knows that he was doing this. He seems like a wicked smart guy, so maybe he does. But it was everything. And this is what I noticed when Leo was talking, because it's pointing back to what Melissa is saying, to change your state first and then do the thing. Okay, this is what I was perceiving. This is what I saw in this little 90-second or whatever it was clip. I don't know how long it was, a couple minutes maybe. Okay, Leo stands up. He's really nervous. He's got the mic. He's trying to find his courage. Okay, what does he do? On camera, I see him take several good deep breaths, exhales it out through his mouth. Right away, I know he's allowing his parasympathetic nervous system, he's inviting it to come online, right? The vagus nerve is down regulating. He's taking those breaths. His nervous system is like seeking, like, okay, we want to feel different, right? So we know that breathing, pranayama in yoga, breath work, right? Breath control can really help us. He takes, number one, he takes a couple of deep breaths. Number two, he was given cues of safety. So the nervous system, number one thing, it is looking for cues of safety. The number one question it's always asking is, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Right? So Michael Sheen, in his brilliance, in his maybe subconscious wisdom, right, gives him physical cues of safety with his face, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then the aide who leaned over and said, or the guide or the teacher who said, do you want me to read the question? Do you want me to ask it? Right? So she put her hand on him. So now he has a physical sense of support and safety. While that's happening, Michael Sheen is looking at him. He gives them a little head nod that says yes. So deeply subliminal. He winks at him, right? Not in a creepy way. He gives him a little wink and he nods and he says yes. He gives him verbal permission, right, to take his time. So he gets an offer of help from the teacher. He's getting all these he gets a verbal cue right in his ear from his teacher, gently, not to embarrass him, right? Just says it quietly to him. And that's when he responds like, no, I want to do it myself, right? He's finding that courage. And then he's like, but I'm just nervous. And he gets to say it out loud. He gets to say what he's feeling out loud. And all of these people around him who care about him, I'm assuming, right? Because of the way that they were acting towards him, it seemed as if they cared about him. They are supporting him. They're encouraging him. So he is getting what I would call compassionate witnessing, Okay. He states his fear. He states his need, like, I'm afraid, I'm nervous. And then the people around him offer him help. He's surrounded by people that want to see him win. They want to see him have a great outcome to this. And he hears the words of love and support around him. He was encouraged. And all of those little things, that is what starts to shift what he's feeling. Because after the friend, people are saying, don't worry, Leo, you can do it, Leo, right? He's getting all this encouragement. He's getting cues of safety. He's getting all this stuff. What I would call his balcony people are cheering him on and supporting him. He's starting to shift how he feels. He's moving out of feeling too nervous to ask to then finding within himself something clicks, something changes, right? His state is changed enough that he then asks the most eloquent and beautiful question about, I think it was about Dylan Thomas or about Michael Sheen's favorite writer. It was such a lovely question. And as soon as he finds the words and he says it out, he gets rewarded again, a little dopamine hit again, because Michael Sheen says back to him, what a fantastic question. So his courage is like rewarded. It's paid off. And the moment is just so beautiful. He was encouraged. And this, I believe, is what helped him to increase his courage. And I just thought to myself, how different would the world be if instead of everybody spending so much time trying to tear each other down, trying to attack each other in the comments on social media, trying to make other people feel stupid or embarrassed or to shame them? What if instead our intention was not only, of course, kindness, compassion, right? All these things, but what if it was encouragement? What if our encouragement helped to increase other people's courage? It would be a totally different world if we felt like we were safe, we were supported, we were seen, and we were being encouraged from the people around us. So if you currently do not have those kinds of people around you, I would highly encourage you to find some. And the timing might be perfect because I am reopening I have a spiritual mentoring group called The Nest. And The Nest, I ran it for 3 years. I took a pause for a year. And now in May, we're reopening it. And I'm so excited. And if you want to find out more about it, you can just go to karenkenney.com/nest. All the information is right there. But this is an incredible group of people who are there to do their own spiritual work, their own personal development, but they're such an incredibly supportive and warm and loving and encouraging community. And it's an incredible thing. So if you are lacking that kind of stuff, maybe in your day-to-day life, maybe the people around you are not that encouraging. Maybe you are like, okay, there's a big change. There's a big step. There's a transformation that I'm trying to make. There's a relationship I'm trying to leave. There's a job I'm trying to go for. I want to ask for a raise. I want, whatever the thing is, I want to sign up for this race. I want to finally write this book. I want to start a podcast. I want to start a business. I want to start sharing my art more, whatever it is, you know? The Nest is a very powerful place. And if you don't have those kinds of encouraging people directly around you in maybe your origin family or your friends or your workplace or whatever, the Nest is a place where maybe you can find that kind of community and that kind, and there's guaranteed shenanigans in the Nest. KT, I know you're listening. There's guaranteed shenanigans also in the Nest, but it's a fantastic community. And I would love to have you be a part of it. You can, like I said, you can find out more at karenkenney.com/nest. Check it out. But you guys, I hope that this was helpful for you in some way. I hope some part of this story, at the very least, was entertaining, but maybe it was educational in some way or encouraging to you, or it enlightened you in some way. That would be my hope. It made you feel something. And if you happen to see the clip, okay, check out BBC One, The Player, Michael Sheen. You will find it. Google it. look up Melissa Tias, go follow her, watch that little video on calling bullshit on Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. It was so enlightening to me about how when you get anxious about something, when you have a fear around something, whatever that fear might be, that when you just keep forcing yourself to do it, you're basically wiring the brain to associate fear with that thing. So one of the things we got to do, and this is what we do in my work that I do, is we try to change the emotional state. We try to change how we're feeling to something more resourceful and positive and helpful. So then we can say the thing, do the thing, be the way that we want to do, start to change and shift that relationship to whatever that scary thing might be. Now, of course, common sense here, right? I'm not talking about, common sense here. Okay. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. As you know, one of my goals is to always leave people better than how they first started the episode, right? So hopefully something from this landed in your heart or in your mind. And it's how I always end the show, right? My goal here, one of my, the biggest heartbeats of this show is to simply spread more love in the world. So hopefully I was successful in doing that a little tiny bit, maybe just a little bit more love. Okay. So you guys, wherever you go, may you leave yourself and the animals and the other people and the environment, the things and the people you come across. May you also leave things and people better than how you found them. Wherever you go, may your presence, may your being there, may your love be a blessing. Thanks. Bye.